listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL Divisional Round Preview, Part 1 for Monday, January 6th, 2020. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, it was indeed a wild card weekend. Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. And, of course, we've got to look ahead. That's what we do. You know, those games are great. What can they do for us moving forward is what we try to do. And we're going to do that right now with Jack, our go-to odds maker, one of the very best in the business. How's the weekend, Jack? That was crazy.
It was a crazy weekend. It was a tough weekend for the players with all the teaser money with New Orleans going down, and it was a big win for the house.
That was the one, right? I mean, you needed one somewhere, but that's the monster, right? Everybody, New Orleans, basically everybody's teaser was New Orleans.
And the other big one was the interception by New England at the end of the game, whereas all teasers were going to cover in that game. Brady threw the pick with a couple seconds left. And,
it was those crazy plays that's right at the end of the game.
Yeah.
You know it has an impact somewhere. It's just a question of where.
Right.
That's wild. All right. Well, let's move forward here, and we'll focus on Minnesota and San Francisco. The Vikings, I will say that here on this podcast, other platforms, it's been about a month. I've been saying, watch out for Minnesota. And all during the week, I was getting a little antsy, like, well, like you're on an island here, that everybody was so reacting to how bad Minnesota was the last couple of weeks. And Jack, I swear, you had to look at it like it was a horse race and draw a line through it. I mean, Minnesota's not Minnesota unless Cook is in the game. But the point is, if Cook is in the game, Cousins is a quarterback, and Thielen is not invisible. And that's exactly what happened. And on top of it, Drew Brees had an off day.
He did. Most people agreed with you, Brian. Let me put it this way. Most of the smart people agreed with you. The public was all over the Saints in that game. But all the smart money was on Minnesota. It was a tough game to balance because you don't want to leave yourself overexposed, but the wise guys were taking every 7.5, 8, 7+ money that they could, and the public would come right back and lay 7, 7.5, and 8. So it was a lopsided game on the books, but you and those smart guys were correct. Minnesota came alive in the playoffs.
Where I was wrong, Jack, is I just thought the way New Orleans was going, that would be a track meet-ish kind of game, and Minnesota's defense held up really, really well. Was it Brees had an off day, or Minnesota made Brees have an off day?
Whenever one of these good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks, actually in Brees' case, has an off day, it always comes down to a pass rush. It comes down to that couple seconds where the secondary covers, and by that time the pressure's on them. And whether it be Brady, Brees, Unitas in his prime, it's always going to be a factor. And that's what happened. Minnesota put on a good pass rush.
All right, so you see Minnesota take out New Orleans and know that they're off to San Francisco. What was the thought process hanging a number here?
On this game in particular, we had San Francisco open 6.5 and 45.5. Right now it's 6 and 45. And I guess the thought is San Francisco, New Orleans were probably an entry. And yes, New Orleans was a bigger favorite at 7 points at post time, but New Orleans is just as good as San Francisco, and if Minnesota can beat them, your choices are only to take Minnesota +7 if you see it. So it had to be less than that.
And then there's the fine line, and this is for the market to decide. The advantage of getting fresh, hosting the game, and the other team, going on the road and playing a war, or they've got momentum and a team all of a sudden kind of coming off the shelf. It's only a couple of weeks late in the year, but there's at least the concern sometimes, a little rink rust, right?
It's always the argument, rest versus rust. And whoever wins the next game, that faction claims to be correct. but it does go back and forth over who wins that way. And I mean, the way these teams play to get that bye, I have to think in their coach's mind and in the players' minds that it's very important that they would rather have the rest.
I don't know. I think they're dangerous. I think Minnesota absolutely can win this game. The crazy thing is, and we've seen it before, it used to be such the rarity, but, a team that plays on wild card weekend that can go on a run. And I wonder, though, if you're sitting here looking at Cousins playing with house money, the guy that could never go on the road and wins a big game goes on the road and wins a big game. You wonder if there's anvils off his shoulders and he really becomes something.
Yes. Does he revert back, or does it become the one that gives him a rebirth, an epiphany on how to quarterback? I guess this game it will be a big factor in determining that.
And do you think sevens pop up at all during the week? Or are they gone?
I think they're gone for good. I think everybody grabbed all the 7 they could last night. I don't see the public knocking the door down to bet against a Minnesota team that just beat New Orleans. So I think unless you're buying the 7, I don't think you're going to see it again.
All right. Now we move on to Tennessee and Baltimore. And I again, this is the one, I got to be honest with you. You're an idiot if you think, you know everything, and you best be listening to other people. Everybody, and I get the cautionary tale, but all week long, well, New England's not been what New England is. It's Belichick and Brady. It's this time of year, and I'm like, I don't know, man. This team, Tennessee, again. Throw out week 6. Everybody shot holes at everything they did. Oh, they lost to New Orleans. Yeah, but Henry didn't play in week 16, and they gave them all they could handle. Yeah, but they lost that game to Houston at home that mattered. Well, okay, Houston's a good team. And Henry, now, I'm telling you what we saw against the Patriots, they didn't do all year long because they didn't have to. They can ride this guy like a horse now, Jack. Derrick Henry, he's the great equalizer here. This team's playing football.
You're right. Henry is the big factor, and I think Belichick decided to take away the pass, which he did for most of that game. But I don't think he counted on Henry having such a big day. And all said and done, it's 14-13, and if Edelman catches that pass on the sidelines for another first down, history could get changed.
There's no doubt New England, but they were flawed all year long, and you could see it. But you got to give Tennessee credit, and with that running game, a running game like that should be able to travel like a good defense does. That would probably be the biggest question in this game: is what Vrabel and what that defense can dial up for Lamar Jackson. Tell me, as you watched the Tennessee game and you were getting ready to put a number up for the Baltimore game, what were you thinking going in? Would be the number, and then after what you saw, because this one's still. And this is certainly this number's not a knock on Tennessee. This is belief in Baltimore. This number,
right? This is Jackson and the year that Baltimore had, and their defense, and an experienced coach and a good organization. All that said and done, you have to remember New England still closed 4.5 over Tennessee.
That's right.
Now, in our opinion, I think you and I agree that it was a little high, and it played out that way. Didn't have to, but it did. And now we're saying Baltimore, another 3.5, 4 points better than New England. I think that's a given. I like Tennessee in the game. I think they're a tough team. They do everything very well. Baltimore just may be an exceptional team, but gun to head, this game opened up at 9.5 and 48. With us, it's down to 9 dog money. There's a lot of flat 9s, 8.5s, and 8s out there. I think it bounces between 7.5 and 9.5 most of the week. But I don't think he'll touch the key numbers again. And when we talk about Tennessee, I thought one of the most fascinating things was when Vrabel was using up the clock when they had the lead, and he had Belichick apoplectic on the sidelines talking to the referees.
Wasn't that awesome?
Doing just what Belichick would do.
It was hysterical. It was like he's flipping a basket over there, and you're going, if the coin was flipped, he'd have been doing the same thing. That was the great chess game. That was actually pretty funny. Out of curiosity, Jack, I think I know the answer, but just to make sure, when we get to this point, in any fashion, are these games just treated like a snowflake? Or is there any impact on these numbers once from this point forward based on potential liabilities in a future market? Or are these games, look, these games are just going to, let's get two-way action and get on with it?
Yeah, no. Well, first, usually it's handled by different people. Now, not that there's not coordination and discussion between the two about exposure and liabilities, but generally it's not that bad and nothing that's going to say, hey, we have to make this game higher, because if the rest of the world doesn't need the same thing, all they're going to do is take a higher or lower number from you and drive you to the other point anyway. So you have to just put up the best number you can and book it as best you can and go from there.
All right, so let's lock it down. What was the chat? What did you hang? Where are you? Where do you think it goes? Tennessee, Baltimore. Let's just lock down that number.
Baltimore opened 9.5 and 48, and Baltimore is now, as we said, 9 with us, 9 dog money. So you see as low as 8 out there. So as I said, I think it bounces between 7.5 and 9.5 most of the week. When it gets to 9.5, they'll buy 10 and drive it back.
And the total, one more time?
Total was 48. Right now it's 47. And it's very unpredictable because if Tennessee comes out, if Baltimore tries to take away the run, unlike New England did, and Tennessee has to throw every play, I think the game goes over. If they protect against the pass and let Tennessee run as New England did, then the game goes under.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. All right, there we go. Let's go to Houston and Kansas City. And this I would find pretty interesting what the odds makers believe here. Houston deserves full marks, down 16-0. Come all the way back, and the game goes to overtime. I mean, had the lead. The game goes to overtime. It seemed like Buffalo had many more chances to win the game. There was a call that, the Buffalo faction is bemoaning the blindside block thing, which is ridiculous. I mean, football's football. The guy, the guy's not allowed to block the guy. He's chasing his quarterback. He didn't take his head off. He just kind of put his hands out. That being said, this was, to me, more Buffalo giving the game away. But you give Houston credit. I mean, they played to the final whistle. And that could be a dangerous team, right? All of a sudden, they get the break of a lifetime. And we see this all the time. There's always that game in March Madness, right, where team survives and then they go on a run. Houston could go on a run, or was it kind of smoke and mirrors?
Well, I think it was smoke and mirrors. I believe they and Seattle are the two worst teams still surviving in the playoffs. And as we talk about the Houston game, I agree 100%. Buffalo is ready to take it. Josh Allen will be a good quarterback. Right now, he actually could be a very good quarterback. Right now, it's just his immaturity. You want to pull your hair out watching that game and all the things that he would take that sack when they're in field goal range. He would throw a pass that either could be intercepted or was going to hit a lineman. It was
weird. Yeah. Oh no. I mean, it was insane. Some of the things he did, but the crazy thing is, and that's what happens when you're the quarterback, man. You're the lightning rod. But I'm telling you, Daboll, the offensive coordinator, should have his head handed to him. They've got the Singletary kid. They've done this all year long. And you're 9 yards away from field goal range, and Singletary's getting 5-6 yards at a pop, and Allen is kind of playing like a Tasmanian devil, and he goes to a 5-wide open set. It's like, give the ball to the kid. The play calling is just an atrocity. But Houston survives. That's all this is about. Survive in advance.
They did, and Watt and the whole defensive line came alive late in the game. And that sort of goes to what you're saying right there. You get the field goal, which they ended up getting it in a hard, difficult path to get it again, but they did get it. And then it went to overtime, and It was just said, it was just done then. I mean, what are you going to do?
Kansas City, here's the thing to me, and I don't know that this actually plays out this way, but it could. At least it was the plan for Kansas City. They've not had a great running game in any way, shape, or form all year long, but they put McCoy on the shelf for a few weeks and, got home, accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. I wonder if McCoy doesn't all of a sudden become a factor for these guys. If they get a newfound running game or an improved running game, look out. I mean, big time look out for Kansas City.
Well, in doing this game, you try and look up what has occurred with the team. And as you look at Kansas City's schedule, I was trying to see a game where they might be challenged at home and what the point spread was. And you look down in their last games were the Chargers, where they were half interested in playing, Denver in the snow, Oakland, who's a terrible team. Before that, they played Minnesota and Green Bay without Mahomes. So you have to go back to when Houston came to town against them and beat them 31-24.
Mm-hmm.
And that was coming off, that might be the last time they faced a decent team there. And I believe the spread in that time probably was over 7, 8.5, right? So it was over 7. And I guess we're saying that was flukish. But then the oddity is, take the next game we're going to talk about. Seattle and Philadelphia play 2 games during the season on the same site and have the same score of 17-9. So, I mean, can history repeat itself and can Houston beat them? Sure, it could happen. But I think you talk about Kansas City, no rushing game. That's great. I think finally they unleash Mahomes, who should be healthy as he's been all year. And the big thing is their defense is so much better. Now Buffalo made Houston earn all their points on defense. I think Kansas City might do the same. And I still have question marks about the Houston defense, even with Watt back.
Now, this number, Jack, I could see rising.
I could say it won't go above 10 just because it's a playoff game and every team getting points has been competitive. So there's whether it's subliminal or conscious, there's a public perception there that it will sink into their heads, into their brains, and they won't want to lay a lot of points.
KC 9.5, 50 is kind of the consensus, and you think 10's the ceiling?
I think 10 is the ceiling. We opened at 7.5. I thought that was short, but that was a market price, and 48.5. And now you see 9.5. A lot of places we use 10 and maybe dog 20 just for the teaser factor. And I mean, sometimes you have to do it. I don't like to do it until you're forced into it. But that'll be the big thing when you talk about, they'll say Kansas City might not be able to win by 10, but I guarantee you they'll win by 2.5 or 3. And that will be where the public money will be.
All right, sir, we wrap it up with Seattle and Green Bay. And the Seattle game with the Eagles was a mirror image of the game that they had played, 5-6 weeks earlier. Seattle just finds a way, close games. It's not pretty. Russell Wilson makes enough plays. I will tell you, it will catch up with them, Jack. First of all, as we alluded to last week, one of the most egregious things that you've ever seen a football team do was have the delay game and squander the opportunity against the Niners. To their credit, they fly cross country, they get the win, but they got to play an extra game. And instead of being home, now they got to go to Green Bay. But they did it. How many times did they do it again, Jack? They had at least 2 delay game penalties and had to take a timeout in a one-score game. It'll get them eventually. They keep doing this.
Well, I can't prove this, but I believe if Wentz had stayed in that game and they made those mistakes all along the way, that they would have paid a price and they wouldn't be here. But what happened is it played out.
Okay. That's you nailed it there. But let's just cut to the chase. Wentz gets knocked out. McCown, had his moments. Philly had their chances. I thought Peterson, maybe should have kicked the field goal the one time. And you wonder what Philly was thinking in many regards. But that's a great point. They went on the road and they got the win. But how many chinks were there really in the armor there? And then Green Bay, the win-loss record's amazing. But there are a lot of times you walked away going, how's Green Bay doing this?
Right. And I mean, I know Wilson is very capable of doing this, but they made they had a high percentage of big plays on 3rd and long yesterday. And maybe they'll do that against Green Bay also. But I think what you were talking about before is it's less than 50% that you're going to make it. And when you make it 75% of the time, eventually that number comes back to the average. So it has to catch up to them. And whether it's going to be Green Bay that does it, we'll see. But it's a tough game.
Well, let me ask you, because this was the chatter as we're watching the game. In fact, Bruce Marshall, our friend, who we'll be talking to in a little bit here, he was where we were watching the game. But as the game was rolling on, and you're watching it, going, would there really be any difference? What are the odds makers going to do? What's Green Bay going to be favored by here? And I don't know that there would have been any massive difference if it was Philly, if Wentz had played.
No. If Seattle had still come out victorious and Wentz had played the whole game, the spread would probably be the same. We just would have had. You would have had the knowledge that they beat the best Philly team they could beat, and Green Bay would still be a 4-point favorite, give or take a half pointer from whoever you're dealing with. But it wouldn't have been a vast difference at all. Matter of fact, we opened this game 3.5 and 47. Right now, basically, the world is sitting at 4 and 46. I think that barring bad weather in Green Bay, which is quite possible, I think the total could go up a little. I think Green Bay will be able to exploit the Seattle defense much better than the Philadelphia offense without Wentz did. And Green Bay will put up some points. And in return, chasing from behind, Russell Wilson will put up some points.
All right. And now we're down to the final 8. From an industry perspective, Jack, what do you think the home run is? What's the Super Bowl matchup that gets the juices flowing here?
Well, I think it's more in the championship games. I think a Kansas City-Baltimore rematch, that would be great, but we can't get that in the Super Bowl, so we'll have to settle for it there. So I guess it would be San Francisco would give you the West Coast, and Kansas City would give you the Mahomes mystique and the rest of that via his commercials with Mr. Rogers and so on. So we'll go with San Francisco-Kansas City matchup as the best TV ratings.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh no, I agree. I swear to you, it's a weird thing that Minnesota, Tennessee's jumping into the deep end of the pool here, but those football teams, I think they're dangerous. I still believe Minnesota's the one flying under the radar, Jack, that people are going to think that's a one-off, but you could see it coming a few weeks back. I just think with Cook in there, and Zimmer, it just flies under the radar. He gets those guys ready to play. I think Minnesota's a really dangerous team.
Oh, they are. And all I was predicting was the TV ratings.
Oh no, that's what I asked.
Yeah, right.
No, that's what I asked. I mean, listen. Okay, TV ratings. Minnesota, Tennessee. I mean, it's not like they're going to change the channel.
No, but it might rival the Rams New England last year. For some reason, that was like one of the worst viewed games in the history of television, right? Super Bowls.
It played out that way. It was one of the worst games in history.
Right.
All right,
we'll see
sir.
what happens.
We want to just say that we're down to the final 8. It's been great. Your information is so spot on. It gives us a running head start. We have made it all the way to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. As always, Jack, spectacular information.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and/or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.